Why do us mums experience so much guilt? This video is going to take you through some different ways to help manage mum guilt and feel happier and more content in your motherhood. My name's Sophie Harris and I'm a pregnancy and postpartum psychotherapist who specialises in helping new mums overcome all issues related to motherhood and feel calm, happy, confident, content and just how they want to enjoy their motherhood. Okay, so what is mum guilt? So as the name suggests, it is feeling bad, feeling guilty about something related to mums. Guilt is not just for mums, but us mums tend to experience it a lot. So this often happens even when we haven't done anything wrong. So what are some common examples I hear with my clients is stuff like, say if my baby has a stomach bug, for example, I'd feel guilty. Or if they're not sleeping, I feel guilty, like I've done something wrong that causes this. Or perhaps your child fell over when they were playing and you just feel really guilty that you let this happen. Our minds work in some funny ways as mums, and we tend to accept responsibility for anything that goes wrong with a situation, even if it isn't our fault. And in motherhood, we are actually going to make loads of mistakes. We are learning to be a parent. We're all learning as we go along. And of course, we're going to make mistakes as we go through motherhood. And so unfortunately, with this real heightened sense of guilt that so many of us experience, it's really difficult when we do make a mistake because we can often catastrophize and feel like it's the worst thing ever, or we really blame ourselves. So for example, if I was to get irritated and lose my temper because of that conditioning that we've had as women and as mothers to always be calm, never get angry, we really blame ourselves and feel so awful for doing that. Or maybe I forget an appointment and I miss an appointment for my baby, something that's really important, and I'm doing so much in my life trying to juggle everything around, like trying to learn to be a parent, yet I feel so bad, I feel so guilty for missing something and messing it up in this way. One of the biggest things that I hear from my clients is that they are tired, exhausted, depleted, but they feel too guilty to ask for someone else for help. They feel like they should be doing all the work, and whether that's their partner, whether it is family members, they feel like they have to do it. I think there's so much that goes into this of, say, often the clients who I'm speaking to feeling so perhaps more responsible than what they need to, but also this really deep valuing of childcare. If we are, for example, on maternity leave, then it's like, it's not seen as work. So it's like, well, I need to do everything. Whereas actually, as somebody and as a mum who works and has a child, I know that my work is, for me, it's less stressful than raising a child. There is so much that goes into looking after a child, to all of that regulating their needs. So let's say, even if my baby looks calm and happy, I'm constantly checking to see that she's okay. I'm making sure that she's fed at the right time. I'm looking at her cues to see that she's not going to cry, or help her if she does cry. This takes so much energy. We need a break. Yet so many of us feel like we don't deserve a break. And this leads to this really long-term burnout and has such a negative impact on us. It can kind of feel like we're wearing our exhaustion as a badge of honor or something, which, we're conditioned to do this. But I would argue if we can find ways to stop doing this, this would be extremely helpful in the long run. To have a happy child, we need a happy mum. Like, there's no getting around it. And so if we can find ways to do things that make ourselves happier, then that is primarily great for us, but also great for our children. So in the next part of the video, I'm just going to look at some ways to try and help yourself if you are experiencing guilt and excessive guilt, and try to work back from this to help yourself and to feel happier. Okay, the key to this is self-compassion. We need to learn to be kinder to ourselves. I don't know about you, but I'm from a family background, and generationally I feel like we weren't taught compassion to ourselves as kids. We weren't taught that it's okay to make mistakes or to feel sad or to express ourselves. And this means that we have this really harsh critic for when we do make mistakes as adults. I know that this isn't everyone, but I know that this can be really common, generationally different to the generation now. So we need to look at some ways of how can you be kinder to yourself, just in general, in day to day, and also when you make a mistake as well, which we all inevitably do. A way of thinking about this is imagine that really harsh critic who really focuses on all of the negative stuff that you do, and is like, what the hell, what kind of mother are you? Says this really awful, horrible stuff. And it's like, if our child's had a bully in the playground who was saying really negative stuff to them, would we just let them listen to that negative stuff? How no? We would want them to listen to the positive stuff as well. So for each time you notice that critical voice talking to you, you need to be able to balance that out with a more positive, kinder, compassionate voice. So let's look at some ways of how you might be able to do that for yourself and what fits best for you. So one way of trying this is asking yourself a very simple question, but if you had a friend who is going through this, what would you say to them? So that might be a specific friend, or it could just be just a friend in general. But let's take that example of if I missed a baby appointment, which was important for my baby, and I'd messed up my times or whatever. And so my inner critic would be like, you can't even do this. What the hell? I don't know. I can't think, I'm not very good at acting. But it's like, okay, if my friend was going through that situation and they'd missed an appointment for my baby, what would I say to them? And at this point, I would genuinely think what I'd say to them and how I'd feel about the situation. And it could be something like, it's not great, but it's fine. Like, we all make mistakes and it's not that big a deal. You've been balancing so much, we're all going to make mistakes, and you can just book another appointment. And it's definitely not a need to beat yourself up over it. So let's look at another question that could be helpful. I really love this question when working with my clients. So imagine I have a baby daughter. I want her to learn to be kind and compassionate towards others, but also and primarily towards herself. So I would think, if she was going through this situation, what would I say? So let's say she was going through a really difficult situation in life, and what would I say to her? Or let's say, take the example, I've been feeling really down recently. I've been really struggling with being a mum, and I'm just not feeling like myself. And so if that was me, I'm like criticizing myself, like, oh, you should just be grateful, appreciate what you've got, what's wrong with you. But if my daughter was going through that when she was older, what would I say to her? How would I want her to feel? And I'd probably say something like, we all go through difficult phases in life. Like, this is really hard, and it's easy to beat yourself up, but this is not helpful for you because it's not accurate. We're all allowed to feel sad and to take this time to adjust, let's say. And let's look at a final question for this. So this could just be, what would the kindest, most compassionate version of myself say to me? So in this, we're not using an external person, which can make things feel easier, but we're actually focusing on making ourselves more compassionate just for us. So let's use another example. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. But I've been looking after my baby all day, and then I just feel so frustrated by the end, and I'm just like, oh, I can't take anymore. So the inner critic part of me is like, you've got one child to look after, what's wrong with you, pull yourself together. But then I ask myself, what would the kindest, most compassionate version of myself say? And it may be something like, it's okay to have bad days. Like, you are really good in many ways. This is just a difficult day, and it's okay to feel like that. And so with this response, we're trying to reprogram some of this critical thinking to much more compassionate style of thinking. I would argue that it's not a switch that we can just turn on and off, and we can't just go from being critical to compassionate, but it is practice. And so it starts with noticing when you are starting to feel more critical to yourself, and when that inner critic is starting to go, and just simply noticing that and being like, hang on, this feels right, but it's not. Let's use one of these questions. Let's develop my kind of thinking. And as I said, it's difficult just to suddenly be compassionate. But a metaphor that I really like is, imagine if you had a hayfield, like a big hayfield, and you had a beaten path for it. So your beaten path is that self-critic, that kind of mean way of talking to yourself, and that's the most familiar beaten path. But if you take a new path, initially it will be quite difficult because you'd be trying to make a new path. So this is the kind of compassionate path, but maybe the more you do it, it gets a little bit easier until it's actually just the new normal. And so that can be a really helpful way to think of new, whether it's new behaviours, new ways of doing things. It gets easier over time. I have developed a self-compassion script that you can use when you're in those moments where you're starting to notice you're becoming really critical to yourself. This is available to you if you use the link down below this video, and if you join my emailing list, then I give out regular tools and free support resources, which I get really positive comments about how much they've helped people. So use the link below to join my email list, and then that will be available to you. And I'd love to hear from you how you get on with any of this. Let me know actually in the comment section below what's your biggest struggle with mum guilt? Like, how do you experience this? I'd really love to hear all of your experiences, and I will see you in the next video.